evening out of it, you know? Oh my.
Kicking things off hot today.
I'm telling you, man. Here I am thinking like, break them up. Let's talk some fly guys. Here we go. Welcome in midweek, and we appreciate you hanging with us on the Jock NBA Strategy Show. We have a lot to look at here on a busy NBA slate. Myself, more importantly, Jeff's in the house. Mike's Awesemo is producing, and you're hanging with us. Hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here. We'll tell you about Jock Market. Our promo code stays the same. Awesemo will match $50 right away, so jump in as you're listening to what Geoff is saying, breaking everything down. Sign up, and then you can be part of the program here, interacting as well on the chat. What's up, my man? I'm excited here. Got a lot of NBA stuff going. I'm in full Flyers mode here as well, as you can see. I'm just rocking.
Wow.
This
Two
is like
wins in a row, isn't it? Like, wow. Exciting stuff.
Break them up. Yeah, man. It's very exciting here in Philadelphia. I can promise you that. How's everything with you, man?
It's good. I mean, I shouldn't be making fun of your hockey team since I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan.
No.
We have like 2 wins in our last 15 games as well. So that's just the pot calling the kettle black, or whatever the saying goes. So anyways, going good. Happy to break this down. Nice little, I think 9-game slate tonight on the NBA. Some big names, and see where it goes for Jock Market.
Yeah, speaking of Philadelphia, we get a nice little return from Joel Embiid after a night off Monday with their matchup against the Wizards. So let's just look at this overall. Jock Market's a little different, of course, as we always kind of let people know from the jump. You have the opportunity to play guys with a fair IPO value that's going to be available to you all out there on Awesemo. Alex and Site has put together their own projections, and then the fun begins. No lineups are locked. It's nothing like that. The slate isn't locked as soon as the tip goes up. You now have the ability to attack game flows, whatever's happening here, buy low, sell high, as we say. Is there a game or two that you were looking at, either from a total standpoint or maybe just from a personnel standpoint, Geoff, that you were looking at that you think you're going to attack a little more than the others?
Yeah. I think there's probably, there's a couple, but maybe for different reasons.
Sure.
I like this Orlando Magic Pacers game. I mean, it's something you got to kind of pay attention to. There's a lot of players out for the Pacers, and I think that works good for both sides of the game. On the Orlando side, I mean, you've got a few players I think that really you could just pick up some cheap shares of tonight, because I don't think they're going to go super, super high or anything. But, Franz Wagner is definitely a guy like you can get hot. I mean, again, Indy just losing bodies here, and we've got a close point spread, so I don't even mind taking a shot with him. But Mo Bamba is also in a good spot. We got Miles Turner, Sabonis out for Indy. I mean, like top, and then their backup center is out too. So like Mo Bamba is in a spot where, again, close game. If he pushes for like over 20 minutes, I kind of like him for Jock Market. So I think there's some cheap players on Orlando. But the other side of this game, I mean, like Isaiah Jackson, to me, I'll pay up. Yeah, I'll even buy some more expensive shares of this player. Dominated the front court in his last game. He's got a great matchup against the Magic here. He's going to get big run. I mean, like, you should get big run. And he's posted double-digit points now in 3 straight games. Like, I think his usage is going to be very solid tonight. So Isaiah Jackson, a player I'm very much looking. And again, even if his IPO gets up, I think it's just too good a spot with the close point spread. So many guys out on Indy.
Yeah, it's a great place to attack, especially here on Jock Market, where we're taking advantage of increased minutes, increased volume, and it doesn't matter as far as the teams are concerned from that standpoint. And you mentioned here, as far as Jackson, we have him at 350 fair IPO and a pretty decent projection as far as where he is with a couple of other guys. And of course, we're always anticipating that he outplays that by all means. So it's a good place to start on that game. Now, you said a couple for different reasons. So Magic Pacers, that first place, at least as far as taking advantage of some volume and increased minutes. Is there another game or two? I'm looking at maybe Portland, as far as a couple of guys who are just bombing left and right. Anthony Simons, without any conscience, is launching threes left and right against that porous, at best, Lakers team. We have the Nets on the road, so Kyrie's in effect here. Is there another game or two? Even that Nuggets Jazz, although Utah's down a couple of guys, so maybe that opens some things up for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Portland, Denver's interesting from a perspective of maybe you can get some cheaper shares there, just because I think the matchup with Utah often puts people off. I think I have a little bit more interest in that Portland LA game though. I mean, we love targeting, these teams. They're not good at defense on either side.
Yeah.
And obviously, a guy like Anthony Davis, I mean, no LeBron out. He's listed as probable, but I mean, he's like listed as probable for every game. He played through the wrist issue in his last time out. And I mean, realistically, like playing the Portland Trailblazers, so we should be interested here. Dead last in field goal percentage allowed, the Trailblazers. I think it's a good spot to grab shares of Anthony Davis. And I'm not even sure how popular Davis will be on this slate, because like we haven't talked about the studs yet, but I mean, he's good, like what, maybe fifth in people's minds tonight, maybe even like sixth if you put him behind like John Morant,
Sure.
Or maybe even like Ball. So I think Anthony Davis is actually like in a really good place here. And again, like people on Jock Market too, he's burned them. He's burned a lot of people. I mean, obviously injuries, but just poor returns as well. So I think this is a spot where you jump on Anthony Davis. I don't think it's going to cost you that much. And again, I always bring this up with Jock Market. If you're just listening to the show for the first time or you're just trying it out, it's just a different scenario. Obviously the idea in like normal daily fantasy rostering guys with good value, but you want cheap shares of these star players. And you don't really worry about ownership percentage, just worrying about what price of share you're getting them at. And I think Anthony Davis for a stud tonight is going to be available at a cheaper share price, which means we don't necessarily need him to finish like first to get a really good ROI. He can maybe finish in the top 5 and get us a positive ROI. And I think this matchup with Portland screams top 5 finish. So I like Davis from this game, but you mentioned the other side too, man. Like I think CJ McCollum is definitely in play here as well.
Yeah. I mean, real quick, before we hit McCollum and maybe anybody else on there from Powell to Simons, just from the launch factor, Westbrook is popping up as well. And he's pretty much similar numbers from both the projection, Geoff, to a fair IPO number that we have, $10.30 for AD, $10.20 for Westbrook. Same game, same matchup. Any rush to get to Westbrook, similar to what you were talking about with AD?
I think the best way to play the Lakers on Jock Market is get the cheaper guy, because
yeah,
I mean, I think one of these guys will have a big game. And right. I mentioned like the field goal percentage and it's Portland. I mean, I think like obviously it gives Russ a boost too. I just prefer AD because his usage goes up more with LeBron out, at least in my opinion. And I think the stats kind of bear that out too, but it doesn't mean Westbrook can't go off in the spot too. I mean, they might even be a scenario where they both have a big game if Portland can keep this close enough. So yeah, I think a good strategy to go into this is just put in like slightly lower bids on both guys. And if you get paid off, great. And maybe one of them starts slow in game and you can take advantage of the Jock Market in-game feature too and pick up cheap shares, because I think realistically, they'll probably both have solid nights. It's just if I'm picking one to have like that ceiling kind of crazy game where maybe they do get like first place in terms of points, I think Davis has the better shot of that. But yeah, with LeBron out, I mean, both these guys are in play.
All right. So when we look at Portland, it's kind of in tiers, right? You have CJ, you mentioned McCollum, so we could talk about him definitely being that chalk play. And then you have Simons and Powell, who could light up and get you 4 to 5. I've been killing these these 3-point props on the books because of just volume. You know you're going to get like 10, maybe 12 threes from Simons. Powell has been shooting the ball pretty well. So you have those 3 guys to at least attack. And again, this Lakers defense on the perimeter, at least, not much to write home about.
No, not really. They're 19th in terms of 3 points allowed. And they're pretty much, just in terms of like pure points and stuff and like assists, they're worse. They're way worse than that too. So, looking at Simons, I mean, he's actually been pretty consistent across the board. So maybe like a little bit less of a volatile play than Norm Powell. But yeah, like you're right. I mean, Powell's usage is probably a little bit bigger, but yeah, I would prefer Simons between these two. I think he gives you like that slightly better floor. I mean, it's a player who you just look over his last 10 games, averaging like a pretty good assist rate. His 3-point percentage is crazy too.
It's like you said, amazing, isn't it?
It's all well over 40%. So I would probably prefer Simons between those two. I've never been like the biggest Norm Powell fan either, like when he's on Toronto and stuff. So I like Simons. Again, a little bit more consistent. You get those assists, and it's just a really good matchup for a guy like that who produces a little bit better across the board. So you could pay up for McCollum too. I mentioned I really don't hate the spot at all. It really comes down, again, it comes down to price. That's kind of something I always say, but it is true. If you can get Simons for significantly cheaper than McCollum, like that's just a fine way to get a piece of this game. But you have three guys to choose from, and you could almost just say, I'll take the cheapest of the three, because I think all three of them will probably have decent games. But Simons, to me, kind of projecting out, is probably going to be like your best value, just in terms of where he is and the fair value and stuff like that.
Yeah, and last I'll say on Simons, because it's not going to turn into the Blazer show, I promise you, but we've seen this just because I've been tracking his threes on a nightly basis and playing these and trying to especially attack a bounce back game. But you could even see it in January, where he's had these 3 games where he's either shot 2 for whatever or that 0 for way back in mid-January, and he immediately bounces back because of the volume. Because there's nobody that's going to go up to him and say, hey, man, just take 6 or 7 threes tonight. The guy could take 12 or 13 threes. So I love the bounce back factor from him as well.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, sorry. I'm just in love with these 3 props out in Portland, because these guys have been paying off. The other high total game, though, Nets Kings, and you mentioned we haven't talked about a ton of studs by any means. So let's look at the board. We do have Jokic and Embiid to kind of go back and forth a little bit at that 5 spot, but with such a high total with this Nets Kings game, especially Brooklyn here on the road, so Kyrie is in play. Harden is popping right up there at the top with our projections, free Jock Market IPO projections, mind you, on Awesemo. And look, you're going to be paying up for these guys anyway. So Harden at the second highest projected player, Geoff, are you looking to get to him at least ahead of time?
So, yeah, it's really close between. I think this is a spot where, like, I'm definitely okay fading Nikola Jokic. Again, we've talked about, if you're new to the Jock Market format, Jokic, you just need him. You need him to be like a top 3 player, essentially, to get any return. It's just the risk reward with him. It just generally isn't there most nights. Now, maybe the IPOs on Jokic just go a little bit less tonight because of the matchup with Utah. But even so, man, like, again, he finished 6th in his last game, a negative 18% ROI for a 6th place finish. The game before that, he finished 4th, minus 11% ROI. The risk reward just isn't there. So I do think that Harden could potentially get up there as well. We do have him projected for as second, but I think I prefer going after Luka Doncic to be honest. It's just, again, you've got to target the spots where the injuries are. Hardaway out, Porzingis out for Dallas. Doncic has really played well over the last 2 games, really bounced back with some good fantasy performances. And I know there's like a 12-point spread here, but I don't even really mind that, just because the other players are out. So if the Mavericks are winning by 12, we're good with that, because that means Doncic has like 35 points because there's nobody else. So I think this is a real spot to grab him. I mean, Harden is projecting fine, but Kyrie could still step in there. The Nets obviously have a little bit deeper rotation right now. So yeah, between the two, I'm going to try and I would be trying to get shares of Luka Doncic instead of Harden. Where they fall out in terms of the IPOs are going to be interesting. I feel like Harden probably will be the more popular play, because people just look at this game spread and some of the projections have them like slightly higher, but it's really not a big gap between these two. If there is at all, I've seen projections with Doncic higher than Harden as well. So, something where you can kind of take a look at on our site. Definitely, again, Alex's NBA projections, something you just want to use on a daily basis. They just help you sort things out. But you can see, again, the main thing is, like, it's close between these 2 players. And if I can get Doncic tonight, I prefer him slightly.
Yeah, so that actually opens up the question about what to do with Irving to a lesser extent. If you're going to fade Harden for Luka, right, it makes sense. But you also now have the ability to take advantage of Irving with, I guess, the assumption that Luka's going to dominate because of the volume that you mentioned and the usage going up because of guys being out around him. And Harden is not going to have a game to where that's going to eclipse what Luka's doing. So that should open up something for Irving, assuming that Patty Mills is not going to, drop 50 points tonight.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's like kind of a good line of thinking. Like, if we're thinking about it like that, I think that's the next logical step. I mean, Kyrie Irving is projected, I'm pretty sure top 10 in our projections.
Yep.
He's going to go. I mean, most people will be trying to get up to Harden from that game. So going with Irving is pretty fine. I mean, he's been getting up there in the IPOs, but I mean, he's a player who, even when he's gotten up to be a little bit more expensive, he's still produced some pretty solid ROI returns. So hasn't finished inside the top 5 for about 5 or 6 games now, but this is definitely the kind of spot where, you know, if he's going to come out again and produce, this will be it. So yeah, he's a bit more of a boomer bust play. Yeah, but I do like Kyrie. Like I would rather try and get a slightly cheaper price on Kyrie than pay up for Harden tonight from this game. But realistically, like again, if I'm spending money on any of the top plays, I think Davis and Luka Doncic are the 2 guys that I build around.
So in that game, it's interesting here because the Thunder are down. SGA is out. Josh Giddey has clearly been bumped up. So we were talking about Dallas and how much you like getting to Luka over pretty much everybody up top. On the flip side, if you will, the run back would be Giddey to see if you could take advantage of just the continued efforts here that he's going to have, and especially from a rebounding standpoint, moving back and playing some more of the point there with SGA out. So if you're liking the total here, if you're liking at least the Thunder to kind of keep something in this game, or even if they get blown out, I can't imagine Giddey is going to be relegated to, 18, 20 minutes. Any appeal there? I don't know how deep you want to go in this game with the Thunder, but at least Giddey on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same kind of thing as, I guess, like, the Orlando Indy game kind of, if there's opportunity with injuries and a favorite on one side, the other side is probably offering you similar opportunities because they're banged up. And, there's more risk in this one. Like I probably prefer targeting the value options from the Orlando Indy game because we got such a close point spread there. But yeah, I mean, I don't even if OKC is getting blown out, like, is Josh Giddey going to play less than like 33 minutes at this point? I don't think so. He certainly hasn't played less than 30 minutes in like over a month. So it's a good spot, just from that perspective. There could just be some garbage time for him to mop up too, even if he's not trending hot right off the bat. Might be a spot where, OKC, if they get behind early, maybe you pick up some shares of a guy like Giddey cheap, because they make a small run. He'll probably be part of it as well. So always can watch on these big point spreads with Jock Market. Like if one team's kind of getting blown out, there's always opportunities, because typically, when we see a team go on like a 12-0 run or something, the other team will bounce back at some point, and it may not turn into like a competitive game, but at least the fantasy points will start to add up for the guys that haven't been scoring. So I think for OKC, I don't necessarily have to get on anyone, but yeah, Josh Giddey feels like a pretty safe floor play. Darius Baisley is semi-interesting just from what he's putting up, and maybe there'll be some extra shots there, but I don't feel the need to necessarily get on anyone from OKC. I just a little bit worried that this just will turn into a bit of an ugly performance for them. So.
Look, fair enough. I mean, if anything, if it is turning into an ugly performance and they're down 28 at the half, you could always live target guys who are coming off the bench that right? I mean, that's really
exactly
where it gets. Yes.
Yeah. No, and again, like I really do. I think it's a good game to target for in play for that reason mainly. Yeah, and
also be aware that they just don't score a lot of points. The Thunder is a team.
That's the thing, and some, it's the same. I bring this up in hockey all the time too. Like there's some, you find some nice players on some bad teams, but then you're like, these guys just don't score many goals, and it's the same in NBA. Like there's just not that many points to go around for the OKC Thunder, right? So you got to kind of just rein it in. It's an interesting spot. Definitely an interesting game for in play if you're going to be around during the game, though.
Yeah, so we're trying to identify the Montreal of the NBA, who's just going to allow point after point after point.
I think the OKC Thunder, the Montreal Canadiens, should get together for a beer or something after the season. So
yeah, it works. All right, man. So if you're out there and hanging with us, we appreciate you as always. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here. Following along, Geoff's on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind, at Shander Show here, and take advantage of this promo code that we have for you. I mean, Geoff is breaking down not only how to play, but the best plays and where to attack tonight. So you might as well pop on to Jock Market now if you haven't already, and use that promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, so we can match your first deposit up to $50. You could jump in and get it going here. I no more Flyers talk, I promise, but we have to mention the other side here, and that's Embiid. He's right there at the top. Assuming he's playing, I know that when he was out on that planned day of rest, people were nervous that this could be anything deeper, but with the strong assumption that he's back, let me just say this, and Mike here, who's producing, can confirm when we're done, but Joel Embiid, the 1A to winning a championship for Embiid is winning the MVP, and him missing even a minute of a game on the bench kills him. It eats him up. So just know that there's a little extra motivation of a planned day rest, which I'm sure he was against in the first place, to come out and vent some frustration. So maybe we should take advantage, even if he's pounding the Wizards in the first half, to sell high in that case.
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, Embiid could be a great sell high in-game play. You look at this game, it's a 10.5 spread. Obviously, they're playing the Wizards at home. There's every chance here that we get, Embiid and the 76ers up by like 15 plus points at some point in this game, potentially even by halftime. So, you always got to factor in the rest with guys like that. And that's kind of why I brought up Anthony Davis first over Embiid. It's not that this isn't a great matchup. I'm actually expecting Embiid to have a great night. Obviously, we can't pay up for every stud. I mean, you could if you wanted, but So I'm very bullish on the spot for Joel Embiid. I mean, he's coming off rest. You mentioned the MVP stuff. This is a game where he could just go off and in such short minutes too. Like he doesn't even need to play that many minutes. So it's good from that. But if you do grab shares of him, and that's kind of what had me a little bit worried, is just, does he get limited? Because I think, like I mentioned with Doncic, I don't think Doncic is going to get limited unless it really gets out of hand. Whereas Embiid, the minutes could certainly like dry up a little bit there at the end. So good sell high candidate, completely like him. Preferred Anthony Davis slightly, but like maybe it's really more of a value thing. Like I think Embiid has better upside here, and certainly in the projections he does for us too. But Anthony Davis, I feel probably more likely to put in a complete game and potentially just hit one out of the park for you. So that's kind of my take on Embiid. I think this game is kind of interesting for the other side. I'm going to bring up Kyle Kuzma for like the 20th time on this show. It's a good spot. Like the 76ers are like 10th worst in rebounds allowed. Kuzma's really been just, dominating on the boards. And I mean, I just bring up his jock market ROI returns. All you have to do is kind of take a look. Kuzma just consistently, again, last 3 games, over 40% ROI returns. It's a broken record at this point. Yeah, he's got a few bust games on there, but like every one of the big players has a couple games where they're not returning. But Kuzma consistently producing over 30% ROI returns over the last 20 games at a rate that I think is kind of unmatched. Just pick up shares of him again, man. Just keep doing it. You might as well just do it every night because I think he just continually, if you look at where his IPOs are going in that 7 range, even if you get him under $10 or $8, excuse me, he's just a good value.
Yeah. No Beal. I wonder, can you attack Dinwiddie in this game as well?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I mean, I forgot Bradley Beal was out for this game, if I'm being honest. So I think it probably even bumps up maybe like Seth Curry on the other side. But yeah, I mean, Dinwiddie should be in a higher usage spot. A guy who against Philly too. I mean, I'm just thinking defensive wise. I mean, not going to have too bad a matchup here at all. So you could even double up here in this game for Washington. I kind of like I like Washington. They're a team I don't mind targeting when they're underdogs like this because I think they just have that like consistent usage players and guys like Kuzma and even Dinwiddie. Obviously, when Bradley Beal is out, I mean Beal himself when he's healthy is fine too. But when he's out, obviously it creates more opportunity there. So yeah, absolutely. I think this is a spot where you could double up on Washington. Pretty concentrated scoring. Not a team where we really talk about in terms of like value guys, anyways. Assuming like one of Kuzma or Beal's in there. So. Yeah, it's a night where I think Dinwiddie and Kuzma are probably going to be doing most of the work for them.
Yeah, man. And, you bring up Curry and look, I'll just say this as somebody who has been killed from individual to same game parlays by Curry's refusal to take threes more so than not over the last 10 days or so. This is a gift wrap. Absolutely. Like play anybody on the wing going over their threes at this point, especially without Beal. So it's just interesting because the total still is a little low at 213. So it's not like without Beal, there's this expectation of some type of offensive explosion by any means. I am surprised, though, that a game with the Houston Rockets, and I get it, it's Cleveland, don't get me wrong, but it's a little surprising that a game with the Houston Rockets, Geoff, features a total that's below 220 or at least not like the second or highest total on the board. So I don't know if that's been a deterrent to maybe stay away from some lesser options, some lesser talked about, discussed guys either on Cleveland or Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland will be pretty popular tonight, regardless. But it is interesting that this total isn't that big. It does kind of speak to like the true ceilings of these Cleveland guys. I mean, it's CD Osman is getting talked up around the streets. Obviously, I mean, he's super cheap on a lot of sites, and that's one thing about Jock Market though. Like, I think Osman is actually, I don't think it's going to be that great a play necessarily on Jock Market because, again, we determine the price. Like, people bidding determine the price on Jock Market. It's not a set price, and that's what makes it cool. The price that you're getting these guys at is dynamic. We're bidding on them. We're not just saying, okay, I'm going to roster this guy at this price, and then everybody gets on him, and he's going to be very popular in traditional DFS sites. But for Jock Market, like, it's a guy I'd be okay staying away from. Just if he gets bid up, he's just not an efficient fantasy producer. He never has been. He gets the volume, which is great, but even when he's playing like well, he usually doesn't knock it out of the park. And you've got to think ROI return. If he's up there in terms of his general, like, just price that you're paying, I mean, the ROI isn't going to be as good. So I think if I'm looking at Cleveland, I actually prefer trying to get a piece of Jared Allen. I mean, I do think you can get like players on Cleveland. It's not like I'm trying to like talk people out of facing the Rockets here, but I think I'd rather try and get a piece of Jared Allen, a little bit more efficient producer. And just I feel like his IPO just won't be as popular as Osman. So
that makes sense. I definitely think from a counter of popularity standpoint, we want to attack that by all means. Anybody from, like an individual standpoint, not from even the game or the flow, but just from like a volume standpoint. Rozier, for example, we talked about Simons. Rozier is another guy who could take 15 threes tonight before halftime. So, looking at that, maybe it's Halliburton on the Kings, right? Going up against a matchup where they should be blown out of the building, but somebody's going to have to score on the other side of it. Or, even as we just talked about that Rockets game, the default go-to of a Christian Wood, where you're at least just taking advantage of somebody is going to be out there a ton of minutes.
Yeah, Christian Wood is a guy we've talked about in this scenario a lot this year. And I really don't hate it. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr., back in the lineup, obviously, 33 minutes in his last game. I think I really don't hate taking a shot with him. I should go like lesser owned than Christian Wood. And I mean, look, I mean, Cleveland is down big, like just in terms of guys, obviously, like at wait, where are they? Sorry, it was Markkanen. Getting my COVID protocols mixed up here, but yeah, I think it's a good spot to jump on cheap shares of Kevin Porter for exactly the reason you just laid out. Somebody's going to be chucking up some shots here. Porter Jr., obviously the up and down player, been out for a while, and I think people will kind of be slow to just get back on him. And everyone's focused on Cleveland in this game. I mean, even me, like, has talked about it more, where to the point where we're not talking about Houston. I mean, it's not like the Cavaliers are like that good a team that we need to just shy away from rostering players against them. Houston's at home here. It's only a 5-point spread. So yeah, I kind of like Kevin Porter for the reasons you laid out there. Sacramento's more. I mean, Halliburton is definitely in a good spot to just throw up a bunch of shots. De'Aaron Fox still questionable. If we can get some clarity on him, I think Halliburton obviously get a big boost with no Fox.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right, final couple of minutes. Is there anybody that you had marked down here that we didn't get to?
Actually, I think we mainly targeted the players that I wanted to talk about. Mentioned the guys mentioned Orlando. I mean, I really maybe just drive that point home. I think that's going to be a really good game to pick up some shares of guys like Wagner and Mo Bamba potentially. Expecting a close game there. Can't hammer home enough the love for Isaiah Jackson in that spot either. So maybe the one spot we didn't mention is Jason Tatum, for Boston. I think Tatum and Brown both in a very good spot there. So that's probably like the one like higher end players that we didn't talk about. And maybe that is, something to keep in mind just as a last thing. I mean, Tatum's projected is like the highest, small forward on the slate. He's got very good projections for us. A player who maybe people just going to forget about tonight, because again, it's a game we barely even got to, but he's got good upside. If you pick up a few shares of him, certainly will have the potential to, end up with a top 5 finish tonight.
Oilers, man, laying 104 to a 106 home Caps team. That's the shortest of short lines you'll find on Pinnacle all night, man. Any interest there?
None. The Oilers have been a terrible bet all year. I think I finally bet them once.
It's a pick 'em,
last
Geoff.
week, and of course it lost. No, they're overvalued in the market all the time because Connor McDavid's on it, and they're probably going to get blown out by the Capitals.
Look at that Caps money line. That's how Geoff likes to end the show here.
Yep.
Just giving you some nice little Detroit short dog at home too. That's pretty surprising.
Yeah, I don't mind the Kings in that spot either.
Okay. Look, I'm just trying to mine as much information as I can from you across all sports. Hit that thumbs up button, please. Make sure you're subscribed as well. And look, we just gave you a half hour's worth of content on Jock Market on how to put together a winning strategy, make some money. So now it's on you. Sign up, use that promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, and we'll match that $50 deposit up to that right away. And then you can thank Geoff on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind, at Shander Show. For me, Mike Awesemo, appreciate you as always. And thanks to you out there for hanging. We'll see you soon.